And tonight we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. So instead of the partial reading, we're going to have 22 volunteers read the 22 sections of Psalm 119 before Pastor Greg gives a teaching on Psalm 119 tonight. So we'll start with our first reader, Greg Rosenberg.
Blessed are the undefiled of the way, who walk in the law of the Lord. Blessed are those who keep his testimonies, who seek him with a whole heart. They also do no iniquity. They walk in his ways. You've commanded us to keep your precepts diligently. Oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commandments. I will praise you with uprightness of heart when I learn your righteous judgments. I will keep your statutes. Oh, do not forsake me utterly.
How can a young man cleanse his way? By turning me according to your word. With my whole heart I have sought you. Oh, let me not wander through your commandments. Your word I have hidden in my heart, that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I have declared all the judgments of your mouth. I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies, as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and contemplate your ways. I will delight myself in your statutes. I will not forget.
Deal bountifully with your servant, that I may live and keep your word. Open my eyes that I may see wondrous things from your law. I am a stranger in the earth. Do not hide your commandments from me. My soul breaks with longing for your judgments at all times. You rebuke the proud, the cursed, who stray from your commandments. Remove from me reproach and contempt, for I have kept your testimonies. Princes also sit and speak against me, but your servant meditates on your statutes. Your testimonies also are my delight and my counselors.
My soul clings to your rest. Revive me according to your word. I've declared my ways, and you answered me. Teach me your statutes. Make me understand the way of your precepts. So shall I meditate on your wonderful words. My soul melts from heaviness. Strengthen me according to your word. Remove me from the way of lying, and grant me your law graciously. I have chosen the way of truth. Your judgments I have laid before me. I cling to your testimonies. O Lord, do not put me to shame. I will run the course of your commandments, for you shall enlarge my heart.
Teach me, O Lord, the way of your statutes, and I shall keep it in me. Give me understanding, and I shall keep your law. Indeed, I shall observe it with my whole heart. Make me walk the path of your commandments the right way. Incline my heart to your testimonies, and not to turn away my eyes from looking at worthless things, and revive me in your way. Establish your word to your servant, who is devoted to your name. Turn away my reproach which I dread, for your judgments are good. Behold, I want for your precepts. Revive me.
Let your mercies come also to me, O Lord, your salvation according to your word. So shall I have an answer from him who reproaches me, for I trust your word. And take not the word of truth utterly out of my mouth, for I have hoped in your ordinances. So shall I keep your law continually, forever and ever. I will walk at liberty, for I seek your precepts. I will speak of your testimonies also before kings, and I will not be ashamed. And I will delight myself in your commandments, which I love. My hands also I will lift up to your commandments, which I love, and I will meditate on your statutes.
Remember the word to your servant, upon which you have caused me to hope. This is my comfort in my affliction, for your word has given me life. The proud have me in great derision, yet I do not turn aside from your law. I remember your judgment of old, O Lord, and have comforted myself. Indignation has taken hold of me because of the wicked who forsake your law. Your statutes have been my song in the house of my pilgrimage. I remember your name in the night, O Lord, and keep your law. This has become mine because I kept your precepts.
You are my portion, O Lord. I have said I would keep your words. I entreated your favor with my whole heart. Be merciful to me according to your word. I thought about my ways, and I turned my feet to your testimonies. I made haste and did not delay to keep your commandments. The cords of the wicked have bound me, but I have not forgotten your law. At midnight I will rise to give thanks to you because of your righteous judgments. I am a companion of all who fear you, and of those who keep your precepts. precepts. The earth, O Lord, is full of your mercy. Teach me your statutes.
You have dealt well with your servant, O Lord, according to your word. Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe your commands. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep your precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in your law. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. The law of your mouth is better to me than thousands of coins of gold and silver.
Your hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn your commandments. Those who fear you will be glad when they see me, because I have hoped in your word. I know, O Lord, that your judgments are right, and that in faithfulness you have afflicted me. Let, I pray, your merciful kindness be for my comfort, according to your word, to your servant. Let your tender mercies come to me, that I may live, for your law is my delight. Let the proud be ashamed, for they treated me wrongfully with falsehood. I will meditate on your precepts. Let those who fear you turn to me, those who know your testimonies. Let my heart be blameless regarding your statutes, that I may not be ashamed.
My soul faints for your salvation, but I hope in your word. My eyes fail from searching your word, saying, when will you comfort me? For I have become like a wineskin in smoke. Yet I do not forget your statutes. How many are the days of your servant? When will you execute judgment on those who persecute me? The proud don't pits for me, which is not according to your law. All your commandments are faithful. They persecute me wrongfully. Help me. They almost made an end with me on earth, but I did not forsake your precepts. Revive me according to your loving kindness, so that I may keep the testimony of your mouth.
Forever, O Lord, your word is settled in heaven. Your faithfulness endures to all generations. You establish the earth, and it abides. They continue this day according to your ordinances, for all are your servants. Unless your law had been my delight, I would then have perished in my affliction. I will never forget your precepts, for by them you have given me life. I am yours, save me, for I have sought your precepts. The wicked wait for me to destroy me, but I will consider your testimonies. I have seen the consummation of all perfection, for your commandment is exceedingly broad. How I love your law, it is my meditation all the day. Read for your commandments and you write with my hands, for they are evident. I have more understanding than all my teachers, for your testimonies are my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, that you keep your precepts. I have restrained my feet from every word, that I may keep your word. I have not departed from your judgments, for you yourself have taught me. How sweet are your words to my lips, sweeter than honey to my mouth. With your precepts I get understanding, your right every thought.
Then, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. I have sworn and confirmed that I will keep your righteous judgments. I am afflicted very much. Revive me, O Lord, according to your word. Accept, I pray, the free will offerings of my mouth, O Lord, and teach me your judgments. My life is continually in my hand, yet I do not forget your law. The wicked have laid a snare for me, yet I have not strayed from your precepts. Your testimonies I have taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart. I have inclined my heart to perform your statutes forever to the very end.
Samek, I hate the double-minded, but I love your law. You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. Depart from me, you evildoers, for I will keep the commandments of my God. Hold me according to your word that I may live, and do not let me be ashamed of my hope. Hold me up, and I shall be safe, and I shall observe your statutes continually. You reject all those who stray from your statutes, for their deceit is falsehood. You put away all the wicked of the earth like dross. Therefore, I love your testimonies. My flesh trembles for fear of you, and I am afraid of your judgments.
I have done justice and righteousness. Do not leave me to my oppressors. Be sure your servant is good. Do not let the proud oppress me. Eyes fail from seeking your salvation and your righteous word. Deal with your servant according to your mercy and teach me your statutes. I am your servant. Give me understanding that I may know your testimony. It is time for you to act, O Lord. They have regarded your law as good. Therefore, I love your commandments more than gold, yes, than fine gold. Therefore, all your precepts consider to be right. I hate every false sin.
Hey, your testimonies are wonderful. Therefore, my soul keeps you. The entrance of your words is light. It gives understanding to the simple. I open my mouth and panted, for I long for your commandments. Look upon me and be merciful to me, as your custom is toward those who love your name. Direct my steps by your word, and let no iniquity have dominion over me. Redeem me from the oppression of man, that I may keep your precepts. Make your face shine upon your servant, and teach me your statutes. Rivers of water run down from my eyes, because men do not keep your law.
Sabbath. Righteous are you, O Lord, and upright are your judgments. Your testimonies which you have commanded are righteous and very faithful. My zeal has consumed me, because my enemies have forgotten your words. Your word is very pure, therefore your servant loves it. I am small and despised, yet I do not forget your precepts. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your law is true. Trouble and anguish have overtaken me, yet your commandments are my delight. The righteousness of your testimonies is everlasting. Give me understanding, and I shall live.
Come, I cry out with my whole heart. Hear me, O Lord. I will keep your statutes. I cry out to you. Save me. I will keep your testimonies. I rise before the dawning of the morning and cry for help. I hope in your word. I wait through the night watches, that I may meditate. Revive me according to your justice. They draw near and follow after wickedness. They are far from your law. You are near, O Lord. Concerning your testimonies, I have known that you have founded them forever.
Grace. Consider my affliction and deliver me. I do not forget your law. Plead my cause and redeem me. Revive me according to your word. Great are your tender mercies, O Lord. Revive me according to your judgments. Many are my persecutors and my enemies, yet I do not turn from your testimonies. I see the treacherous and I am disgusted, because they do not keep your word. Consider how I love your precepts. Revive me, O Lord, according to your loving kindness. The entirety of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous judgments endures forever.
Shin. Princes persecute me without a cause, but my heart stands in awe of your word. I rejoice at your word as one who finds great treasure. I hate and abhor lying, but I love your law. 7 times a day I praise you because of your righteous judgments. Great peace have those who love your law, and nothing causes them to stumble. Lord, I hope for your salvation, and I do your commandments. My soul keeps your testimonies, and I love them exceedingly. I keep your precepts and your testimonies, for all my ways are before you.
And Tau. Let my cry come before you, O Lord. Give me understanding according to your word. Let my supplication come before you. Deliver me according to your word. My lips shall utter praise, for you teach me your statutes. My tongue shall speak of your word, for all your commandments are righteousness. Let your hand become my help, for I've chosen your precepts. I long for your salvation, O Lord. In your law is my delight. Let my soul live, and it shall praise you. And let your judgments help me. I am gone astray like a lost sheep. Seek your servant, for I do not forget your commandments.
Isn't that great? Praise God. Praise the Lord. You know, it was Tim's idea to have the group read it, and great, just beautiful. Praise God. Well, it's the longest chapter of the Bible, and it's fitting that it would be about the Bible, because that's really what it's about. When we were pastoring in Minnesota, we actually did this thing for a few years, our last few years there, where we would have a sign-up sheet, and people would sign up to read the Bible for this period of time, for an hour at a time, 24 hours a day, and they would come into the sanctuary just, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. And it took about 72 hours to read the entire Bible. So it wasn't like you're going to read these verses. It was rather you're going to read this period of time. It was really cool to have the entire Bible read from the pulpit by the people, right? It took about 72 hours. And sometimes there would be some people who would watch, but for the most part, it was the reader. Because who else is going to show up at 3 in the morning? But the Lord was there, and it was beautiful. That just a little point of interest. You'll notice on page 1, I have that little word in bold, I don't even know how to say it anymore. Idolatry. We're not saying that the Bible is God. That's not what we're saying. But the Bible is a letter from God. It's from Him. And it's different from saying, I used to think that the Bible was as though it were like Jesus wrapped up, as it were, in, take the words and turn them into a person. But no, that's really not true. The words come out of Him. Otherwise, we would be turning it into an idol. It's not an idol. It's a letter from Him. So we cherish it. We love it. Do you see the point? And it's perfect because it comes right out of His heart. The words that come out of my mouth are not me, I'm me. I have to repent sometimes because of the words I speak. But God never needs to repent. His words are eternal. But we do love the Word. In fact, I brought this just because, for gee whiz sake, as I was thinking about how much we love the Bible. This is not exactly a Bible. This was given to me in 2nd grade. It's a Siddur. It's a prayer book. And a Jewish person, I remember hearing this, if you drop a Bible, like at 1st or 2nd grade, if you drop it, when you pick it up, kiss it. So as a young kid, I kissed this thing so much. Not because I dropped it. I don't think I ever dropped it. I just kissed it. And it literally wore the ink off the book, right? And so as I thought about loving the Word, right? And we love the word. Just love the word. I mean, I know that that's my lips that made that mark right there. And it wouldn't mean anything to anybody else, but it sure does a lot to me. So on page 1, at the top of it, as I often do, I gave this the introduction from Sonsino. Donna was asking me about yesterday how I studied the Bible when I was growing up, and when did I fall in love with Sonsino commentaries? Because you see that all the time, right? It was soon after I was bar mitzvahed. I started taking private lessons with a rabbi, Rabbi Kaufman, and we actually used Sonsino commentaries. And so that's what we used, but we were studying 1 and 2 Samuel, and I fell in love with them, and now I think I have them all, but they're really good. Anyway, they're not always great. Sometimes they're trying to build a circle around the idea to exclude Jesus. But for the most part, 98% of the time, that's not the way it is. 95% of the time, they're really good. So here's what Sonsino says about this particular psalm. It says, an extraordinary declaration of the joy and help which the Torah brings to those who conduct their life under its direction fills the longest of the psalms. It consists of 22 stanzas to correspond with the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. Each stanza comprises 8 verses, all beginning with the same letter. In turn until the alphabet is completed. So there's 8 verses, and every verse in that psalm will begin with the ayin or the shin or whatever. So every verse. This is a masterpiece of literature. To be able to write something like that. That the author is acquainted with Psalm 19, 8 through 10, and that's why I put it on the right side there, is certain, because he adopts the key words there used. So as you know, I'll often color words, and as you were reading along in the psalm, you saw them colored, right? And so the colors will match even in Psalm 19 here. And it's just so the Sonsina is saying it's evident that the person who wrote, or the people who wrote, because Psalm 119 doesn't tell us who wrote it. Psalm 19 does tell us that it's written by David, but 119 does not tell us who wrote it. But it is evident that whoever was writing 119 obviously was very familiar with Psalm 19, because he's using the same words. It's like he took this thing that David wrote and just fell in love with it and loves the Word of God. We taught on Psalm 19 here about a year ago. It says that the author is acquainted with Psalm 19 is certain because he adopts the key words there used and taking them and others as his motif weaves them into a verbal fugue. It is an individual who draws so lavishly upon his resources of language to convey his love of the Torah and what a force it is in his life. But he is the spokesman of many of his co-religionists and who would endorse his tribute. He probably lived in the 5th century. Ezra lived around that as well, as you can see, and was an ardent disciple of the school of Ezra the scribe, about when Ezra lived. I have seen there are people who think that David wrote it. David is given credit, possibly because David wrote 19. And David's given credit for all the Psalms. But he didn't write, sometimes the Bible will say, it just credits David with the Psalms. And yet there are Psalms that are specifically told to us in the Psalm that are written by other people. Right? So it's like obviously Moses didn't write the last chapter of Deuteronomy. It's about his death. Right? So, David is given credit for the Psalms, and clearly he has influence, great influence, and maybe he did write Psalm 119. But I've also seen suggestions actually of other people. Most interesting to me is Ezra. Ezra may be the person who wrote this particular psalm, not only because of the time, but also because Ezra is this guy who actually is, how we have every time we meet, we read the Parsha. Well, who developed the Parsha? Ezra. That's just historical fact. He's the one that gave us the breakdown of how we read the Torah through the years. And so he may have written this. We don't know that, but he may have. There's a few things about this that are just like before. I'll run through it a little bit, but just a few things. I'll just as you were reading, and I just kind of marked up my paper a little bit, because I couldn't possibly say everything. How do you say everything? It's like I was joking with Mel on the phone about this. I said in 41 years in the church since I got saved, I've never heard a sermon that went over the whole Psalm 119. You'd have to be out of your mind to do this. I mean, who would do this? Because there's so much in it, right? But as you were reading, and there's just some things that just stood out to me. I'll just if you just walk, and then I'll go back and go over the notes that I made. But these are just newer things, as it were, as I was sitting there listening to you, and I only started to do this a little bit later. Like, look at verse 67. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. He doesn't claim perfection. He doesn't claim perfection. He says, I had some problems, and they helped me get some things right. That's what he's saying. And the psalm has a number of places where he'll talk about people coming against him. And like, for example, in verse 69, the proud have forged a lie against me. And he talks in here about princes coming against him. So it's like in verse 110, he says, along the same thought, he says, the wicked have laid a snare for me. So he's got some struggles going on, right? And he's sort of saying, if you put that together with verse 67, that maybe some of those struggles, maybe those attacks from other people, maybe those are the things that he's saying were good for me. Because when Saul attacked me, I leaned onto God all the more. It's kind of what he could be alluding to. And then in verse 71, it is good for me that I have been afflicted. That's David's testimony today. It was good for me. I don't want to go through this. I wouldn't wish it on anybody else. But you know what? In retrospect, it was good for me. And my guess is there's a lot of people in this room who would say, it was good for me that I went through that mess. It was hard. It was good. I'm thankful it's over. And then I noticed if there's one verse that stands out to me in the psalm, it's verse 97. And I won't say much on it right now because it'll be in the notes I already put in there, but I just wanted to show it to you right there. Psalm 97. Oh, how I love your law. How I love it. I love it. And then in verse 139, my zeal has consumed me because my enemies have forgotten your words. How many of us have stopped watching the news as much as we used to? Because there are people in the world who just hate the Word of God. Just anything to do with the Word of God. Right? And that's sort of the point that I see in verse 139. My zeal has consumed me because my enemies have forgotten your words. And this is kind of interesting. Look at verse 155. Actually, I could probably take you to 123 first. Yeah, 123. Let's go to 123. My eyes failed from seeking your, guess what the word salvation is? Yeshua. There's a few times where the word salvation will appear in this psalm where it's not his name, but it is his name. In verse, and if you want to mark it, you can. I didn't put it in your handout. In verse 123, salvation, that's Yeshua. In verse 155, that's his name. Yeshua is far from the wicked, for they do not seek your statutes. There's something about when we're seeking God that he just draws us in. He's there. I think about that demonic Gadarrhea, he had the legion Legion is an outfit of about, if I remember right, 56 or 5,800 Roman soldiers. That's a lot of demons for him to be called Legion. And when he sees Jesus, he goes running to him. If Satan could keep a person from coming to Jesus, he would certainly have kept that man from running to the Lord. He gave him the power to be able to break chains. But the one thing the devil cannot do is to keep you from approaching the Lord. Thousands of them could not keep this man from running to the Lord and falling on his knees before the Lord. He can't do it. So if the Lord is not near us, frankly, it's because we haven't wanted him. Because no demon and no cohort of demons can keep us from running to the Lord. His name's in verse 155. His name's in verse 166. Lord, I hope for your Yeshua. I hope for Yeshua. That's not a man who's running from the Lord. That's a man who's running to the Lord. All right, and then in verse 174, I long for Yeshua. And he ends again with that same thought in verse 176. I have gone astray like a lost sheep. I don't consider myself perfect. I know I'm a sinner. I need Yeshua. There's no claim of perfection here. No claim of righteousness apart from God's grace. And an exaltation of the words that come out of his mouth. And that's the Bible. I think it's beautiful. So let me take us to the beginning of what I wrote. Look at on page 1. Sonsino, that's a Jewish commentary, not messianic, not believers in Jesus, a Jewish commentary. One of my favorite commentaries, no doubt about it. Love them. And then Kidner, who's Tyndale commentaries. That's Christian. Okay? They both say there's 8 key words in this psalm. 6 of those words come right out of Psalm 19. A 7th one is found earlier in the psalm. Now, you'll remember that the first part of Psalm 19 is about natural revelation. The heavens declare the glory of God. And the second part of the psalm, the law of the Lord is perfect. So the first is about specific revelation. So the first part of Psalm 19 is about how, like, the sky, you can look up at the sky, you see clouds, you see the stars, and you go, I know there's a God. You see a baby being born, I know there's a God. Right? But the second part of this, and the name of the Lord, if you will, Yahweh, that name is not in that first part of the psalm. Because natural revelation will tell you there's a God. And so you'll see the word Elohim, which is the word for God, in the first part of the psalm. But you won't see his name, Yahweh, in the first part of the psalm. You'll see his name in the second part of the psalm. I think it's about 6 times. Where it's mentioned, it might be 7, where it mentions his name, because the propositional truth, the special revelation of, and these words that are repeated from Psalm 19 that are in color on your page, those words, the Bible, if you will, it gives us his name, it gives us his identity. Nature didn't tell Moses God's name. Moses said, what is your name? So I can tell the people, and God told him his name. And then Moses wrote it down. And that's why we know his name. And it takes that kind of revelation for us to actually know him personally. But nature will just tell you there's a God. You have to be intentionally avoiding the obvious to know that there's a God. But the scripture and the revelation of God, that's how we get to know who he is and what he's like. And that's the Bible. And that's why we love the Bible. It's one of the many reasons we love the Bible. So there's those words. And Kidner says they're synonyms. He says they're like bells expressing the beauty of God's scripture. And they repeat throughout the psalm. So the first one, and every time the word appears, you can see law, which is, in English, it'll be the word law. But the Hebrew word is actually Torah. And it's used 25 times in 25 verses and 21 of the 22 stanzas. So none of the words are in every stanza. But it's just like the writer of this just keeps taking these words and just using them over here for this and using them over there for that. It'd be hard to say the theme of this stanza is this, whereas the theme of that stanza is that. That would be hard to do with this psalm. Maybe somebody's done it. I'm unaware of it. But I'm completely unaware of that. Because I don't see it. But what I do see is that the whole psalm is this beautiful picture of what the Word of God is. And so we've got these 8 words. Now, these are nouns, these 8 words, these 8 key words, they're all nouns. And so the word Torah is a noun, and nouns in Hebrew come from verbs. The language is built on the verbs. And so the nouns come out of the verbs. So all the Hebrew nouns have a parent verb. And the parent verb for Torah means to teach. That's what Torah means, to teach. And so Sonsino says, I think they may be overstating it just a little bit. They say it's inaccurately translated by law. I wouldn't say it's inaccurately. I would just say it's way over the top, emphasized beyond what is reasonable to make the word Torah mean law. That's over the top. It's not really true. It can mean law. It does mean law. It's just not the primary meaning of it. But it does. So it's not inaccurate. It's just an overstatement. Does that make sense? But their point is really good. It is inaccurately translated by law, which has given, and here's where it gets really good, the wrong impression that a legal system is intended. The true meaning is teaching, direction, and it connotes the whole will of God as imparted to man for his guidance. What is the Torah? It's God telling stories, and then like Leviticus is full of laws. You've heard me explain that before, the 5 books of the Torah, and there's a lot of laws in Leviticus and not so many laws in Genesis. But you can find some laws in all the 5 books, but you find more stories because it's instructions. It's like it's like a loving father saying, this is how you can live a life that I can bless. And that's Torah. Oh, how I love it, he says. And the law of the Lord. See, notice in Psalm 19:7, the law of the Lord, the Torah of Yahweh is perfect. Ray Comfort, Hell's Best Kept Secret. If you're not familiar with Hell's Best, not heaven, Hell's Best Kept Secret. Go online and Google that, and you can find like a 33 or 36-minute video, or you can get like a 50 minute, some odd long minute. Go for the shorter one. You'll want to watch the longer one, but it'll be harder to watch that first. Kirk Cameron's one of the other people in it, but it was designed by Ray Comfort, who is half Jewish, and he's the guy that developed the whole thing. And I'll tell you exactly what he does with it. He points out, notice Psalm 19, verse 7. What converts the soul? The Torah. Does it say the Spirit? Does it say, what is it? There's one thing that converts the soul. There's one. You need to go watch that video. We should show it here sometime, but it's just really good. What converts the soul? And he deals directly with that issue. Hell's best kept secret. I should have put that in here, but I didn't have. I wish I had done that. Page 2, James 1:25. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this one will be blessed in what he does. So the Torah is given for the purpose of showing us how to live. This is a life you can live and I can bless it. That's what he's saying. Doesn't mean he doesn't love us if we don't live that way. It just means this is a life you can live that I can bless. Do you see the difference there? I can bless this. Go do what you want, but I can bless this. That's Torah. And as I think of that, okay, Matthew 5, I think this is just so significant. Do not think that Jesus said, I came to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Now, 98% of the church world says that Jesus came to fulfill the law and it no longer is there. But if that's true, then he essentially abolished it. He essentially laid it aside. But he goes on from there in verse 21 to say, you've heard it said of those to those of old. Who was it who said it? Moses. You've heard it said by Moses. You've heard it said to those of old. Moses is the one, you shall not murder. That's the 6th commandment. And whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you, who's ever angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. Does he make it easier or harder? 1,000,000 times harder. He didn't lay any of the law aside. He made it harder. He goes from there into the subject of adultery. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery. But I say, if you look with lust, you've already blown it. He didn't make it easier. He made it harder. Fulfill does not mean to do away with any part of it. It means to show the full meaning of it as it was always intended to be. So Moses goes up into Mount Sinai and he receives the 10 Commandments and he comes down off Mount Sinai and he gives the 10 Commandments that he received in the mountain. Yeshua goes up into the mountain for the Sermon on the Mount, and instead of receiving the commandments, he gives the full meaning of the commandments. And he can do it because he was the one that gave it to Moses in the first place. So he goes up there and he doesn't receive the commandments, he gives them. This is what they always meant. I'm giving you the full meaning of it. And to prove that he had the authority to actually give the full meaning of the commandments, what does he do? He comes down off the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5 through 7, and in chapters 8 and 9, he gives 10 miracles in a row. Why 10 miracles? To show that he has the authority to show the original full meaning of the 10 commandments. You cannot say the commandments are done away with. The first 3 commandments, I'm God, no idols, treat my name right. That's the first 3. The 4th commandment is the Sabbath. God will become a man. Rest, saved by grace through faith, not of works. I did this for you. Because all the rest of the commandments are about humanity. Honor your parents. That's this way, not this way. That's on earth. It's in creation. Honor your parents. Don't kill. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. And the last commandment, don't covet. But if I touch her, then I haven't coveted her. I've actually committed adultery. If I steal the wallet, I have not coveted the wallet. I've stolen the wallet. The only way to break that last commandment is with the heart. As soon as you do any other way, it's no longer in the heart. The commandments have always been about the heart. And the New Testament is in no way more about the heart. The Old Testament is every bit as much about the heart. So he says, whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men to do so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever doesn't teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom. Notice in Matthew 5:19, he's talking about people who get into heaven. Everybody in verse 19 gets into heaven. Those who are great in heaven and those who are least in heaven. And notice in verse 20, these are people who don't go to heaven at all because they don't have righteousness. And our righteousness comes only one way, through Yeshua, who died on the cross for our sin. And he gave you his righteousness. Lord, you died on what should have been my cross for my sin. I'm like David in this psalm in the last verse, or Ezra, whoever wrote it. And I acknowledge that I am a sinner and I need your grace. And Yeshua said, I will pay for that. And he died on what should have been your cross, my cross, for our sin. He gave his life for that. And when you give your life to Yeshua, what does he do? He says, God the Father says, you see that cross? If I had a cross, I'd put it on the wall. He'd say, that cross has sin being paid for. And because you gave your life to Yeshua, that now is your sin that's being paid for on that cross. And because you're now living your life, you're now living the life that he gave up on your behalf. And from now on, when God the Father looks at you, he will not see you, he will see Yeshua. Because he looked at that cross and he saw you. Jesus had no sin to put on that cross. If sin was being paid for on that cross, it was my sin, it was your sin. He didn't have any sin. So you exchanged, Jesus, you died for me. You gave your life for me. I'm going to give my life and live it for you. That's that great divine swap. If you have not ever made Yeshua your Savior, your Lord, I beg you, do it. Otherwise, you've got your sin. You'll answer for it someday. I don't. I'm a sinner. I'm a reprobate. Everyone in this room, apart from Yeshua, is a full-blown reprobate. Every one of us. If you're honest, look in the mirror. What have you done? Have you ever told a lie? Have you told 1,000 lies? What do you call a person who's told 1,000 lies? Have you told 1,000 lies over your lifetime? I just heard a lie. Of course we have. Have you ever committed adultery from the heart? Of course you have. Have you ever taken anything that didn't belong to you? Of course you have. Have you ever taken anything and taken the name of God and used it in vain? Ever once? So you used God's name as a curse word in his presence. If you say yes to those questions by your own conscience, you would say, I'm a liar, I'm a thief, I'm an adulterer, and I'm a blasphemer. But if you say, Yeshua, you died for my sin, for me, all of a sudden, God the Father says, you know what? I like you. I like you. That's what happens, that divine swap. So and by the way, number 2, testimonies. I don't have time to go through these, but testimonies. There's 2 different words depending, the Sansinos, there's 2 different Hebrew words there, you'll notice, and I kind of highlighted them different. Bottom of page 2, top of page 3, but they're cognates. They're the same different forms of the same word. So Kidner will say one is one of the key words of the psalm, and Sansino will say it's the other, but it's the same word. One of those 2 words is the same word that is used 21 times in the book of Exodus for the 10 Commandments. The tablets of the testimony. And then the word precepts on page 3. Rules that it is our duty to obey. This is, I wish I had time to go through these. I just don't because it's our time. But this is a word drawn from the sphere of an officer or an overseer, a man who's responsible to look closely into a situation and take action. We are responsible to take action. We are responsible to live our lives as responsible people. And then there's this word for statutes, chok. It's the word's chochim because it's always in plural. I think there might be once when it's singular. But it is interesting that the word actually means it's engraven. something that's engraven in a stone. That's number 4, engraven. And you'll notice the things that God engraves are forever and ever. And God's word is forever and ever. It's forever. And then on the top of page 4, the commandments. This is just a general term for a law of God in the sphere of a religious life. And this word emphasizes straight authority of what is said and not merely the power. And I thought this was an interesting thing that Kidder would point out the difference between authority and power. And some of you will find this interesting because in Greek, in the New Testament, you'll notice that the Lord Yeshua said, behold, I give you authority, exousia, to trample on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy. There's a difference between having authority and having power. The policeman may not have the power to stop your car, but he does have the authority. And the Lord gave you the authority to stand against all of the power of Satan. And then the word number 7, the word, a general term for the expressed will of God, just a general word for that, or general word for word. And then number 8, Imra, a poetic word, the variant for another word for word. Just it carries more of the idea of a promise. So with that in mind, you have enough there, and you can look if you like on your own on page 13 and 14. I gave you some of the qualities of God's word, which are beautiful. So the Lord's good.